Hey everybody, this is Deanna Kosarajiou, founder of Global Tech Women, and I want to welcome you or re-welcome you to Voices 2015, depending on whether or not this is your first session. This is version 3.0 of Voices, our third year of this annual conference where we hold and celebrate women in technology around the world the week of International Women's Day. So happy International Women's Day to all of the amazing global tech women out there. So a couple things. If this is your first session, I'm just going to walk you around the virtual room a little bit with the Spreecast. Over here on the right-hand side, you see this chat window, and this is where you as the viewer can send notes to us, can network with one another, let us know who you are and where you're from. We'd love to hear where everyone's coming from. It's a lot of fun to connect with women in tech around the world. If you're a visitor, you won't be able to use the chat window, so you would need to log into Spreecast in order to do that. However, you're more than welcome to attend the session if you don't want to log in. In a few minutes, I'm going to be launching a PowerPoint, and what the PowerPoint does, we use SlideShare for that. It will bring up a little box with the PowerPoint in it, and you can drag and drop that PowerPoint anywhere on the screen you would like so that it doesn't get in the way of our speaker, nor in the way of the chat window so that you can make comments or ask questions. So also Shawna will be letting you know what slide number she's on so that you can follow along because you're going to have to advance the slides yourself. So that way we know whether you are paying attention, and there will not be a test at the end of this session, so you don't need to worry about that. So with that, I think I've covered everything there is to know about Spreecast for now. I will be going offline as soon as I introduce Shawna, but I will be in the background moderating the chat window and answering any questions you have. Feel free to send me any questions, comments, concerns, ideas, anything cool and groovy to me at deanna@globaltechwomen.com. I love to get your email, and just let me know what you think about this session. Just love to get just one sentence. Let me know how you think it's going. And with that, I will introduce this talk. I'm really interested in this one. This is your roadmap to an extraordinary future. This is by Shawna Corden, who's an executive coach at HP, one of my favorite companies, Hewlett-Packard. They have lots of women on Voices this year, both as speakers and attendees. So I'm sure a number of HP women will be joining this session or watching the recordings as we move forward. So with that, I'm going to leave it in Shawna's capable hands. I'm going to launch her PowerPoint here. So as I said, just drag it and drop it anywhere on the screen so that it doesn't get in your way. And she's got 13 slides, so she'll let you know what slide number she's on. Okay, Shawna, take it away.
Thanks, Deanna. Well, welcome everybody. I'm really glad to have you here. I've been doing a version of this talk for a couple of years now, and it's one of those that it's the most rewarding for people simply because they realize that Plan B could be a lot more rewarding than Plan A. So before I jump into it, just a little bit about me and my background here on slide 2. I've been with HP for a very long time. I started when I was 10. And I do a lot of work with employee engagement and basically anything that makes employees healthier, wealthier, happier is the real focus of what we do. I also coach leaders to be more authentic and make sure that they really understand, how they can lead from their true selves rather than a blueprint of what some business book says that they should be doing. And I welcome all contacts and inquiries. Link with me on LinkedIn. I'd be really glad to hear from you. So let's get started. What we're going to do today is basically use the analogy of MapQuest. Hopefully all of you have used MapQuest at some point in your lives where you're trying to drive from point A to point B. And you know that there are some things you can do to improve your journey. And we'll talk about that as basically Route A. And then usually we don't plan for obstacles. We're going to talk about obstacles, all those things that can be happening, both from a welcome point of view, such as getting married, having children, things like that. Also some less welcome things, illness, injury, that sort of thing. Some of these things happen and they turn out to be very, very good things. So we're going to talk about what happens when things don't go as planned and how you can arm yourself to be really resilient. Okay, so step one is really looking at imagining yourself using MapQuest to route your career. So you can see here we've got a little illustration of me way up in Corvallis, Oregon, trying to get myself on Route 66, because it's such a famous route, to Chicago. But in order to do that, I've got to get down south to Arizona and basically link up. And as I go through this, I have the option of optimizing my route. And if you look at MapQuest, they give some options like what's the shortest distance, the shortest time, I want to avoid highways, and so on. And for some people, when they start off in their career, they're very keen on minimizing any obstacle whatsoever. They are all in, all the chips are on the table, and they dedicate all the time that they possibly can to furthering their career. So lots of extra hours, missed opportunities with family and friends, maybe missed opportunities on hobbies or things that are enriching in the pursuit of moving up the career ladder just as fast as they can. And I'm not criticizing anyone who has that interest, but a lot of times people believe that that's how they're the most effective to the company, to be that dedicated and that devoted and single-minded. But I assure you that's not what we find in the leadership ranks. And I want to talk about some of those things that you might think are an obstacle, but really will make you much more well-rounded and valuable in your career. So I'm looking here at slide 5 here. We're looking at some of these things that might come up when you have a different route. So you can see that children, since this is a Women's Day and Women's Conference, and of course this applies for all dads as well, children are a challenge. Even something as simple as your child being sick, you can't take them into child care or drop them off because they're going to get all the other children sick, and therefore that means that you have to have either a backup babysitter or something at home, or you need to work from home that day and cancel your original plans. I remember one time I was an account manager for Barcelona, and I had one of my colleagues traveling all the way from Spain to meet with me, and my child was sick. And I was totally embarrassed, but said, would you mind coming out to my home? We can work from my home for the day. And, you know, just how that worked. And it wasn't ideal, but it was one of those things that helped me understand him much better. He understood me much better, and it actually brought us a lot closer together. And not that I would advise that or put that on anyone's development plan, but it was an obstacle that clearly had some great benefits when we worked through it. A lot of times when I'm working with leaders, what we see is that they want to work the formula or the recipe to move up as quickly as they can. And at HP at one time, it was definitely do a tour in every functional area. It was have an executive sponsor, you know, basically someone who would put you forth for opportunities, projects, promotions, do an overseas assignment, so you had more of a global perspective. Way back when, it was have a virtual assignment, but most people have virtual assignments these days. And also do some community work, whether it was board membership or something like that, that was created more of a diverse background for yourself. And all of those things were part of the recipe. And that's not so much the recipe anymore. But I still think that that diversity of both thought, background, ideas is really part of that formula. And sometimes we just want intentionally something different. We do want children. We don't want to work 65-hour work weeks. You know, we want to have more work-life balance. And we especially see this with our millennials and some of our newer hires. They recognize that work-life balance is a lot more important. Okay? So what I'm going to go through now is basically all of the building blocks for resilience when it comes to these detours in your career. And it can range from anything from relationships to just working on building your confidence. So the origin of this whole talk came through when a woman that I was mentoring was basically in an ROTC situation. She had, and for those of you who may not know what ROTC is, in the United States, we have a program that if you enroll with our one of our branches of military, as you enter university, then you basically have a job, I'll say it's 25 hours a week or so, where you're dedicated to pursuing your profession in the military as they pay for your schooling. And then once you finish university, you're an officer and you enter full-time service as a career in one of our armed service branches. So this young woman was destined to be a Navy pilot, had spent every summer of her college career flying, practicing, training, doing all the things she had done. She was an outstanding student. As the career fairs, the networking, the job interviews all came through, senior year, all of her friends and colleagues were going to these job fairs, but this young woman didn't, because she thought, I'm going into the Navy. I've got my plan all set. I've known this for the last 4 years. I'm way ahead of you all. And she graduated, walked in her ceremony the next day. She checked in for duty, had her physical, and they basically fired her. For whatever reason in her medical, they decided not to accept her. And she was devastated. She had been very successful in her career all along, had done very well, performed well, and obviously this would be a challenging area for a woman to participate and excel, but had excelled all along. But when it came to that final examination that seemed like just walking through a door, it all came out from under her. And she was wholly unprepared to interview, didn't have a resume, hadn't practiced interviewing, hadn't networked, really had no clue what she was going to do next. And because of this medical situation, she was exempt from some other things that she probably may have considered that were in similar lines of duty. And so this is how this whole talk came about was, okay, looking back, what could we have done? What should we have done? And really an examination from that. And so I hope that you all benefit from her sad circumstances, which, by the way, she's doing outstandingly well now. So let's talk about the first step here, talking about relationships. This idea about having relationships, both formal and informal, in all areas of your life is significant. So this is where the networking happens, and you've probably heard all kinds of statistics about how people get jobs, and networking is significant. And so tools like LinkedIn are really extraordinary in terms of that GPS for yourself about how to get into the company that you're interested in, or how to get into the department within your existing company that you're really interested in. And this can be as formal as setting up a lunch date, saying, I'd like to interview about your job, I'm interested in moving into your area. Or it can be something as informal as, I'm interested in this particular field. Can you talk to me for a few minutes about what drew you to it, what's rewarding about it, what you'd like less of, what you'd like more of, and so on. We also have mentors. So the definition of a mentor is someone who's a subject matter expert and can give you advice. And it doesn't mean that this person is older than you. It doesn't mean that they're particularly smarter than you. They just happen to be in this one given area. And the big mistake that I see a lot of people make is that they believe their mentor should be their mentor for everything. And that's just simply not the case. No one's good at everything. And so what we really encourage is that you create more of a board of directors approach for yourself. So what do I mean by that? Well, any CEO, in our case, Meg Whitman for HP, has a board of directors, and she surrounds herself with this board who are all experts in their field. Someone who's an expert in consumer goods, someone who's an expert in legal, finance, and so on. And so we should take that very same approach when it comes to our own personal development and mentors. You know, who is the person that you believe is the best parent that you know? Can you go to them for parenting advice? Who is the person that you think is best when it comes to matters of the heart and, you know, delivering difficult news gently but in an uplifting way? Who is it that you think can really read a balance sheet better than anyone else? Those are the people that you want to populate your organization chart basically with. And you don't have to call them up and say, well, I'm hiring you to be on my board of directors as my finance liaison. You can just simply go to them when you have a finance question. Okay? You do want to make these relationships personal and relevant. What I mean by that is everyone has had the experience of having someone call them just to gather some information, but they're not willing to exchange information or share information. They're just there to take. So don't be a leech. Definitely look to see what you can provide and give to these people. Maybe they're in love with cats and you want to share your latest favorite cat video. That could be something that they find valuable because that's a passion of theirs. Okay? So do make sure that the information is relevant, it's up to date. It can be even something as simple as, I read this article in the Wall Street Journal the other day, I thought it would be of interest to you. Okay? That's simple. Do keep your contact list up to date and relevant. This can be as simple as a tool like Brewster. It can be your LinkedIn contacts. It can be your Outlook. Or it can be a very extensive spreadsheet that includes birth dates, kids' names, you know, favorite hobbies, movies, you know, the last time that you talked to them and what you talked about, or the last article that you sent them. If you really want to be very diligent and professional about it. And it depends on the role you have in terms of the investment that you want to make. A politician, probably a very good idea to have that extensive spreadsheet. Sales reps who need to keep track of these things in terms of developing rapport and trust, that's really significant. But for others, it can be less formal, and I think the better relationship that you have with the person or the longer history that you have with the person, probably the less formal it can be, because it's a sincere reaching out just to say hello, hey, what do you know about this, etc. And probably the last tip that I would offer about the relationships here is creating a tickler to maintain those relationships. I'm not sure if this term translates around the world, but it's something like, for example, a post-it note in a calendar to say, it's been 3 months since I talked to this person, I need to reach out to them again. And you probably have something like this for your dental appointments, your yearly checkups, that sort of thing, where you get a reminder. That's really what we're talking about there when we say tickler. Okay. So moving on to our next element of a strong plan, talking about flexibility. When I interviewed women about their experiences and what really turned the plan B into something really good and rewarding versus that originally planned route, they talked about flexibility. And this really means not saying that's not my job or I'd never be good at that. It's really about understanding what you would be good at in terms of trying, what you would enjoy, what would be a benefit to both sides. You know, at HP, we talk about the HP way as win-win language, in that it's got to be a win for both parties in order to do it. And so what would it be for you? What could you be open to? Perhaps you're asked to do an extended business trip to do some training in an area that you've never been. and you're not quite sure if you want to go there. Do try to be open-minded and take some well-calculated risks. Obviously, you wouldn't want to put yourself in any situations that would jeopardize those near and dear to you or your relationships, things like that. But where would this fit in terms of the lattice of your life? So earlier I was talking about that very direct route of plan or point A to point B as being a ladder. First I'm in this entry-level position, then I'm in the middle, then I'm a supervisor, a manager, a director, and so on. The lattice is more moving side to side, back and forth, just like a garden lattice. And so you might move up, you might move sideways, you might even move down in order to have this breadth of experiences. And this means, basically not saying no when someone who has your best interest at heart is really making an offer to you about something that they genuinely believe would be good for your career. It's also a very good idea to keep up with what's happening in the marketplace in terms of trends and needs. I would say probably a good 15, 20 years ago, project management was project management. Now I think a lot of people are quite familiar with the professional project manager credential. They understand the significance of it, the communication benefits between PMPs, and so on. And that's a trend that we saw in the marketplace. And I think we're probably going to see continued certification processes for technical skills, et cetera. And so if you're in one of those fields, where is it going? Is that certification important? And do you want to be an early adopter when it comes to that? Okay. The other thing that these women said is they said they didn't narrow their opportunities too early in the process. So there should be another O on this too there. But really looking at that to say, keep my options open as long as possible until I have to make a decision, because you never know what's going to emerge. And then finally, Thomas Jefferson said, in matters of fashion, move with the tide, but in matters of principle, stand like a rock. So when it comes to compromising your integrity, your most valued possessions, meaning your family, those that you cherish, that's when there's no room for flexibility. You have to protect those things. Those are your dearest investments. Okay? So, talking about a reserve. Traditionally, this is an area that people are really uncomfortable in. There's a great book out there called The Number, and it talks about the actual dollar figure that someone believes that they need to save before they can retire. And even the closest of friends don't discuss that number with one another. It can be that uncomfortable. And there's a story in the book where someone asks someone else, well, what's your number? Just as he's lining up a putt on the golf course, and he misses the putt, and the guy never talks to him again. So it's a delicate subject for a lot of people, but it's one that's very important because the more chips you have, or the more of a reserve that you have, the more flexibility and the more risk you're willing to take. So if we use the analogy of being at a poker table, if I have 300 chips and you only have 30 chips, I'm probably going to take some more risk because I have the ability to do so and still bounce back. But you might feel like you need to be a lot more conservative when it comes to your chips because you have so few. So when we talk about this, we're talking about saving for a rainy day, meaning not spending more than you earn. Charles Dickens talked a lot about, the person who is happy is the person who maybe has only 1 pound more than they actually earned in a year in savings. But the person who's very unhappy is the person who has spent 1 pound more than they earned in a year. So it really can make a difference if you're worried about your finances and things like that. It's a great idea to meet with a financial planner to talk about your goals. Everybody's goals are different. Some want to work until they die, and some are, hell-bent on retiring at the age of 50, and that's okay. But make sure you have a plan to do so, a strategy to do so, and so on. Another great resource that I highly recommend is a book called Your Money or Your Life. And it was written by a Wall Street investor and his activist partner. And together they basically observed that too many people were spending without really thinking. And so if I use a round number of you're earning $50 an hour and you're paying $25 an hour in taxes, and then you're spending, another $10 on the clothes that you wear for work and your car that you commute with and the insurance for that car and so on, you really need to realize that you're actually making $15 an hour. And if that's true, then would you really pay $15 to go see that movie that was only so-so at the theater? Maybe not. And so we're not suggesting that people become extremely frugal or anything like that, but just to be very conscientious about how you spend your money and is it on the things that you truly find rewarding and valuable. Finally, I want to make this point here regarding about the plan for potential move or job changes. If you decide that you want to move with another company because of opportunities, benefits, or maybe it's a change in geography based on the company direction and things like that, it can be a really good idea to have that safety net in terms of being able to move, to pay movers to move you, to pay people to do the things that you really don't enjoy doing yourself or that you're not that good at. And those things can be really helpful in terms of your earning power and, of course, the flexibility in that Plan B process. So, flexibility. We talked more about this idea of flexibility and this idea of having a reserve. But finally, what we need is to rely on our strengths. And what I mean by that is, hopefully all of you are very familiar with a great tool that's out there that's called Now Discover Your Strengths. That came from the Gallup organization authors. And there's a survey that you can take that asks you some very pertinent questions. And with that, it'll give you and deliver 5 strength themes that you hold. And knowing what those themes are really gives you a lot of confidence in terms of the decisions you make about. So what you really want to do is evaluate your skills and make sure that you're providing at the highest contribution area where you can. And so understanding those 5 top themes, or maybe what your previous managers have said about you in regards to your personal evaluations and things like that at work, and also what you really love to do. So a lot of people tell me, well, I don't know what I'm good at, or I don't know, what I really enjoy, and I go, okay, let's think about this. So anything where time flies, basically you're working on something, you look up and 2 hours have passed, that's a great indication of a strength or something that brings you joy. I personally am not a big fan of spreadsheets and really detailed work where it comes to like matching names and numbers and things like that. I can do it, but it's tiresome for me. That's definitely not an area where I should be working. You also want to think about how the strengths that you have are applicable in multiple career paths. So, for example, a project manager in a company may be doing IT projects and things like that for their company, but that same skill set can be equally applied in a wedding planner situation, construction, project management, event planning, things like that. And of course, there'll be specifics to learn in each of those different industries and nuances that are significant. However, the skills about diligence, about planning, about estimating, communicating are all the same. And so understanding where those skills transfer is really important. Now, if you're just a C programmer, that's all you do, then you're fairly limited. You realize that C programming is basically the only words you can put in any job search engine wherever you go, unless you're considering and willing to retrain in a different area, to look at some different opportunities that are also about programming. Maybe you want to learn a new programming language or something like that. Okay. So do take some time to create some awareness for yourself about what your strengths are, where your skills fit for the industry. For example, we mentioned earlier about trends. Is there a trend in your industry to have a certification or to work in a particular area in order to be valued? That might be important for you. But do ask for feedback, especially when you're back on that relationship slide. When you're networking, ask for feedback. You know, what are you hearing in the industry today about certifications, training, continuing education, and so on? So get really clear about that. Okay, so talking about resilience. When we talk about resilience, we want you to think of this image of, instead of the oak tree that's strong and steady in all winds, and if anything, it'll break before it bends, we want to think much more about a willow. So hopefully the willow tree transfers around the world, but it's a very graceful, flexible tree. It's one of these trees that you know, will basically flow in the wind. It'll lean back and forth, but it very rarely breaks. It's a very, very flexible wood, and it's something that's used to make furniture, like woven furniture and things like that. So on slide 11 here, we're talking about this idea of resilience, and probably one of the best things that we can do to build our resilience is actually creating the awareness that we need to do so. So just like when we at times feel like, gosh, I feel like maybe I'm off, maybe I'm coming down with something, you take in a lot of fluids and you go to bed early and you get more rest. The same thing is true in terms of the workplace. And when we come upon that bump in the road that tells us we need to go back to plan B, you know, we need to go look at the map, we need to kind of reassess things with the GPS and program a new route, we really need to take the time to acknowledge that plan A didn't work out. Sometimes it's not a big deal for people, but sometimes it's pretty significant. I think a lot of people, and I'm probably the last of my generation, really believe that you could start at one company, work there your entire life, and retire from the same company. I would say that probably the generation after me didn't believe that, didn't need it, were quite comfortable with the idea of moving 5 or 6 times in their career to different companies. So morning plan A, if that's appropriate, does take time. And if you're not familiar with the grieving model, I think Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's On Death and Dying or the William Bridges Change Model are both really effective tools to understand the flow of how that mourning may work in terms of anger and denial and acceptance and so on. So do take the time to educate yourself if change is being thrust upon you and you're pretty unhappy about it. And I think even the best of changes, you know, a new child, a new marriage, a divorce when you were rather unhappy, all of those things are wonderful things, but they do require some changes, and sometimes there's a little bit of sacrifice, even with that great, wonderful new thing. For brand new moms, you know, the idea that you can have sleep uninterrupted is a thing of the past. And it might be something that you need to mourn a little bit. So the second thing we really want to do in terms of resilience is acknowledge the need to change. One of the best tools that you can arm yourself with is just a little map that you can make on a piece of paper. The left side of the paper is what was, the right side of the paper is what is, and just acknowledge all of those things. For the new mom, it was that I could sleep through the night. The new mom is I might get interrupted 2 or 3 times, and I might get 1 to 2 hours less sleep a night than I did before. So things like that can really help. A strong support system is one of these things that's been documented again and again throughout multiple industries about how helpful it is. There's a program out there called Real Age that can measure your chronological age versus your biological age. And one of the things that creates a much longer, healthier life is a support system. So whether it's a faith group, friends at work, a book group, anything like that, that you can lean on and confide in. And that's really the key there. Someone that you can talk to kind of disperse the energy that you have about the situation. Okay, so they don't have to be perfect. They don't need to be counselors, although counselors can be quite helpful. A coach can be quite helpful. Mentors can be quite helpful. It just needs to be a listening ear that demonstrates some compassion. Okay? The more that we can support ourselves in terms of this strong mind, body, spirit connection, the better. And so in coaching, we talk about this as hygiene, and we don't mean it like showering and wearing deodorant, but what we really mean when we say that is this idea that you're really taking care of all the things that support you as best you can. And so that means getting enough sleep, drinking enough water, really limiting stimulants and depressants like alcohol or caffeine or nicotine, things like that, if not eliminating them completely. Being able to confide in another person, recognizing something bigger than ourselves. And this doesn't need to mean God, it can mean nature, it can mean community, it can mean anything that you tie into that's important to you. So you get to define what that means for you. And then finally, putting the situation in the context of your entire life. So I'm assuming I'm about halfway through my life. I think I'll probably live another 45 years here. And if this job, this particular road bump, in my plan, from my route of A to destination B way over there in Chicago, how big is this really in the context of my career, etc.? I think we've seen some pretty major political figures out there in the marketplace in the last few weeks who have come up with some amazing situations that seem like they could very much threaten their career reputation. But we all know from reading the news, it'll be gone very soon. And so even though at the moment it feels like it's a disaster, you can't go on, your car has disappeared, whatever it might be, you might feel like you've been hijacked completely. Truly, it will pass. And so recognizing that it might take some time to build up a new network, it might take some time to retrain or move into a different area, those will take time, but life isn't over by any means. It's a huge obstacle. And so what we really want you to do is look at this and put it all in context to say, this can be my new future. This can be what I really want. And so the last thing that I really want to leave you with is this idea of confidence being your friend. We talk a lot about fear, and we talk about fear preventing us from doing some pretty fantastic things, but the truth is fear will always be there as long as we're growing. Anytime we're outside our comfort zone, there will be fear. And so the trick is to make fear your friend. Instead of them being on stage with you and threatening you and making the worst come, what you can do is really put fear in its place. It can be in the back row, on the edge with maybe even an obstacle in their viewing to your success. But make friends with fear. Fear is something that can actually be good for us. It can keep us on our toes. It can keep us competitive and things like that. I do recognize that even the most confident people who are the very best in their field, they always have a little bit of fear to keep them moving. So make peace with it. Secondly, do have a method for yourself about keeping current with the conditions and what's going on in your field. And so that might be just keeping up with a trade magazine in your area. It might be joining a professional membership organization, going to chapter meetings, or again, relying on the network, what's out there. There are a lot of opportunities, especially for those of you who are in university towns, and now that more and more universities are going to the virtual learning route and conferences and opportunities like Voices, you can take advantage of these lectures or career fairs to understand other people's roadmaps, how they got from point A to point B, especially if point B is your desired destination. How did they get there? How did it work? What advice did they give you? Again, recruit them to be one of those mentors on that board of directors you have. Of course, you don't have to, tell them that directly. You can just read their book if you prefer. But do take advantage of those. And then finally, one of the best things that you can do for yourself is just to live life as if everything is rigged in your favor. That the opportunities are going to come to you, that you are going to know the best connections, that you are doing the best you can in terms of getting trained and all of that. So finally, that really is the most important thing, because as long as you have that positive attitude and that you're confident, it'll keep those opportunities coming across your desk, and you'll have a cheerful, open environment for people to come to you. If you have this attitude that nothing is ever good, I'm never going to get another job, I'm doomed, I've lost all of my career opportunities, I've been blacklisted, I'm never going to get a job, you won't. Because no one wants to come talk to that person at the party who looks like they're angry and upset and bitter. So again, even if you have to fake it for a little while, it's one of those things that's so important to have that positive attitude, because eventually it will become genuine. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions that people have. Okay, so I'll take the first question here from Pat. What does LOA mean? LOA, thanks for asking the question, is an acronym for the law of attraction. And not to get too wooey with people, but the law of attraction basically says that our thoughts become our feelings, and our feelings are broadcast to the rest of the world. So the example I gave about the gentleman that might be in the corner all bitter and crabby at a cocktail party, nobody wants to go talk to them. They're just going to attract more bitterness, more anger. But the person who's grateful, who's cheerful, who shares, will attract more people who are grateful and more reasons to be grateful, and more people who will share. And if you want to learn more about the law of attraction, there's a great book and video, I think it's available on Netflix, called The Secret. Other questions? You're welcome.
While people are contemplating their questions, I have a question for you. And this is something that happens, I hear a lot about in the Global Tech Women Facebook group. So that's why I'm asking it, so that I can throw this video at them and have them review this, because this is great information. A lot of women in technology, they've been in the field 10 years, 15 years. And what they find is that they get pushed out. Either they didn't keep on top of the technology, or there's just some reorg and their group is out, and a lot of them have difficulties going after that new job. They thought that they were going to be at that company for a while, or they thought things would be different, and so they hold on to it, and they have difficulty finding a new job because, like you said, the law of attraction. So what if you could get, I know I'm putting you on the spot in a big way, but if you could give them kind of a flow of, how do you go about moving on? You talked about the grieving process, which I agree really does help. But if you could give them some steps on what they could do to get through that process, that would be really
Yeah.
appreciated.
So, number one, I will say that there's no practical duration for grieving. For some people, they're going to grieve for 12 years about their dog, and for some people, they'll be over it in a couple of days. It just depends on how quickly they move through it. And it's not always a linear process. They might bounce back and forth. But aside from that particular step there, I think probably the best thing they can do is get really clear about what they want and then start sharing that with people. So, for example, and I'm making this up, but let's say that I expected that I was going to be a director and I've been passed over twice and I realized I'm never going to get that director job unless I move. I think being really clear about that, saying I'm looking to move to another company that is friendly to women, that has these kind of benefits, and I want to contribute in this way. This is what I have to give, this is what I want. And I think that's really important because the more people that you tell, the more people that are out there that can help you. And I think a lot of people have this attitude of, well, if I share that and I don't get it, I'm going to be embarrassed, or I'll be ashamed. I can't ask them. But the truth is, who else could better help you than your community? And so putting it out there, and then offering examples of what they have to share, whether it's that they're great at diffusing tension or they're good communicating to, translating strategic things into tactical objectives or whatever it is that we're really good at. So again, that comes back to the strength. But just putting it out there, I think, is really important, and expecting it that it'll come instead of, saying it and then inside saying to themselves, but I'm never going to get that. That's dangerous.
Yeah. Yeah, that's really good advice. And thank you for taking that on. And sorry to
Yeah.
put you on the spot like that, but I think that will be useful for a lot of people. I've seen this a number of times in the past, and it's always a difficult process, like you said. Some people, bounce back really quickly, and others have a more difficult time. So this is great. Does anyone else have any questions? Okay, I think what we're going to do is we're going to wrap up. But this has been an amazing talk. Thank you so much, Shawna, for your insight and your wisdom. Clearly, you are a force. You know how to get people into a zone of planning and creating that roadmap, going out there on MapQuest and planning their trajectory. So I'm looking forward to hearing what the viewers thought of your session and how they plan to implement your map. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thanks, everybody. Take care.
Thank you, everyone. And just to remind everyone, this URL will be available as a recording in less than 30 minutes. So if you want to come back and watch it again or share it with your friends and colleagues, I would strongly encourage that you do that. And also take advantage of the many other sessions. I think we have over 30 sessions available for the rest of the week. So there's lots of things to take a look at and think about. So again, looking for your feedback, send me an email at deanna@globaltechwomen.com. Thanks, everybody. See you at the next session.
Bye-bye.
Thanks, Shawna. Bye.